Welcome to the Teacher Fellows podcast. My name is Ryan Rarick. I'm an education pathway teacher in Washington County School District. And as always, I am joined by my colleague, friend, and the 2020 Utah Teacher of the Year, Lauren Merkley. Lauren, how's it going right now?
I have a head cold, the time-honored tradition of post-holiday terms, so everything's going according to plan.
Perfect. Winter comes, we spend more time indoors around each other, we get sick more, and we're supposed to love each other throughout it. Hey, speaking of the holiday season, what was the favorite thing you did over the holidays? Like, you can tell me about a gift that you gave or received or some tradition that you followed.
We were in town with my husband's family, and my husband's immediate family is very small, but we got to spend time with a bunch of extended family that we don't spend a ton of time with, which was really, really special because normally it's a very small Gordon family Christmas, but it felt much bigger and more full.
Got to see the cousin Eddies of the family, huh? From Christmas Vacation. I'm just going to shout out my brother got me a gift because he knows what I like. My best friend, Joel Carter, is an amazing artist and he painted a picture of Taylor Swift. So I have a painting of the Queen herself hanging up right next to me in the office. So I think I'm just bringing Swifty energy with me throughout this whole episode. So, Lauren, tell us about our incredible guest that we have today.
With great pleasure, we have our friend and fellow William Shields with us today. So, William is eighth grade US history and ninth grade American institutions and issues teacher at West Jordan Middle School in Jordan School District. He's been really involved. So, he also represented teachers at the 2021 Utah Legislature Work Group, exploring best practices about civic education in Utah schools, which has been a hot topic for a couple years now. He's also an advisory group member of the Utah Civics Learning Collaborative. He has a bachelor's in history teaching from the U and a master's in education, leadership, and policy. We're so happy to have William with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for this wonderful opportunity. I'm excited.
William, before we go too much farther, tell us about American institutions and issues. What is that class?
It's a great question because it was driven by students. So here at my school, we actually do the We the People program, which is an amazing nationwide program where students research and kind of deep dive into constitutional and constitutional related topics and issues and principles, and basically prepare remarks in what appears to be like a quasi congressional presentation. And they work both individually and with a group. And after one of these years, I had students approach me going, "Why do we have this gap between eighth grade and 11th grade about learning about the United States government? And what if we want to keep learning about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, in 11th grade, you'll get the second half of US, and in 12th grade, you'll get your government class." A lot of them were like, "No, we want more." And so it was a lot of students that really pushed for this. And it was a really cool opportunity that I had to work with my administration, the counselors, and with the district to actually look on the state course catalog and go, okay, it aligns with this course, and to write the entire curriculum, to go through the curriculum approval process. And so it's actually a course that I love teaching, but really inspired by students and the students' strive to learn more about everything from the founding documents to Supreme Court case analysis to civil rights, civil liberties, and contemporary issues.
So, first of all, that's incredible. I jump started the podcast, but you're already modeling the civic process through the kids getting this class approved. So it's like very meta, like getting a class about civics approved through the civic process. So I love that. We're going to get into more of this stuff, but before we get too much farther, I want to remind our listeners about our timer rules. Our intro is about 5 minutes, and I'm running right up to the end of that right now. We'll interview William for about 15 minutes, and then Lauren and I will share our final thoughts for about 10 minutes. And before we get into follow-up questions with William about what he just shared with us, let's kick it over to our friend and colleague, John Arthur, who recorded an awesome info drop for us. Take it away, John.
Civics education is having a serious moment in Utah. What is civics education? Well, Utah statute defines it as the cultivation of informed, responsible participation in political life by competent citizens committed to the fundamental values and principles of representative democracy in Utah and the United States. The Utah State Board of Education has stated that developing civic competence is one of the fundamental purposes of our public schools. Our new elementary social studies standards include civics education at every grade level, from identifying the ways people work together to build a strong community in kindergarten, to sixth graders identifying ways individuals and groups work to protect rights considered essential for all humans. In 2022, the Utah legislature established the 3-year, $1.5 million local innovation civics education pilot program, in which districts and charters can apply for grants to fund innovative approaches to engaging students in civics learning. If you're like me, you've probably looked around at some point in the past few years and wondered, how do we get so bad at engaging in civil dialogue and collaborating despite our differences? Well, civic virtues must be taught. It's not easy, but teacher leaders are ready to go.
Right. That was John Arthur with an excellent overview of civic education. And William, that kind of transitions right into the first question that I want to ask you. Well, like, what is civic education and why does it matter so much?
Civic education is when a person learns about what their rights and their responsibilities are living in our nation and world. Generally speaking, civic ed is the teaching and the supporting others in the learning about how to be knowledgeable, responsible, and active within our communities and our government. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that civic ed is actually cross content. And so whether it's analyzing a Supreme Court case in your social studies class, whether it's learning how to write a letter of concern, that can be sent off to an elected official in your ELA class, whether it's studying the longitudinal data of the impact of all day kindergarten, assessing water conservation in your science class, or as of late, we see a lot of legislation and talks regarding the ethics of AI in media and the arts and music. All of that is civic ed. It investigates the government and political systems, programs, and beliefs. And it really gives all of us a better understanding about how to participate effectively within our society. It can mean anything from volunteer work to why do we pay taxes on this and why do we pay more taxes on that? And how do people get paid? Why are my rights and liberties impacted in the news with this? And I wanted to echo something that John said too. I personally believe that one of the most important skills that all of us, I'm not going to just say it for the students, but all of us learn through civic education is how to properly resolve disagreements and how to problem solve. You may have heard it referred to as civil dialogue. Teaching students in my class how to analyze sources, the reliability of sources, comparing and contrasting evidence, and how to construct a consensus. And I think that that's even a term that's really not used much. Is like finding a consensus is imperative to living within a healthy society in our republic. Too often, we sadly have poor examples of anger driving the political discussion, whether pushing civility to the side. But hopefully, with more civic education, we can really see civility and that bettering of our communities and our nation really start to spread and be the driving force of discussion rather than anger and aggression. I love what Governor Cox and the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, I think, they're pushing for disagree better. And it was so funny to me. And sorry, I'm going to self plug on this one, that when I heard that they were doing this through the National Governors Association in 2012, I had the opportunity with Superintendent Dixon to present at Ronald Reagan Foundation about this very thing. And I shared how the greatest compliment I've ever been paid by a student is that they said, I learned how to disagree better. That was huge, that this student learned that, okay, let's look at how to analyze something and see the impacts on all perspectives and really build that civil dialogue. And I truly believe that the classroom is the great uniter and equalizer for our society. And so what a better place and environment to really learn how to be a better community than starting within our classrooms and utilizing the different skills and information that we gain both in our social studies class, but in all of our classes that really does tie back to civil education.
I love how clearly passionate you are about what you teach. I think that's one of the things that makes an excellent teacher. But I think I speak in Lauren and I's language a little bit, where I know that we've mentioned this before, but that concept that literally any topic that we want to bring up fit within your content area as like part of civic education. a clunky transition, but I want to send it over to Lauren. We want to talk to you about the writing that you've done.
I also just wanted to echo something you said at the very end, William. You said something about our classrooms are this great equalizer. And as you describe your classroom, as I think about my classroom in the past, I mean, I'm sort of treating it like a microcosm of the kind of society we want to see, right? These are the children that will be sent out to create that society. And I love what you and John both said about embedding it at every level so that we're constantly creating these microcosms of the society we want to live in. You recently wrote an op ed that was published in the Tribune. So it's entitled Utah Legislators Need to Be in the Classroom. Educators need to let them in, or at least that's a title in the Tribune. What is so powerful about getting legislators in the classroom? Here we've been talking about kids learning the civic process so they can engage with that in the real world. But why is the inverse important? Why do legislators need to be in public school classrooms? What's powerful about that?
Honestly, having elected officials in the classroom has been such a great experience. We've had a mayor, two state senators. We've met with Salt Lake County clerk at the Salt Lake County clerk's office. And we've met up at the Capitol building with a member of the governor's education advisors. And the reason why I do this is because I want the students to feel that they are a part of this societal web that really civics education is based on. So often we hear students say, well, my voice doesn't matter yet. I can't vote. And I worry the same sentiment carries even into adulthood where it's like, well, even if I vote, are they really listening? And the answer is yes, they really are. And so bringing the elected officials into the classroom and not just having them give like a discussion. I mean, for instance, I asked one of the state senators to come in and talk about the system of federalism and the role that Utah plays within it and the role that he's played within like legislation that's impacted federalism. And this achieves so many different things. Number one, it humanizes everybody. That's not some distant elected official that they read about in the papers or see about in the news, or they kind of hear teachers just talk about. It's an actual person. And I encourage my students, they come up with questions and questions that are pertinent to them and to our community. We've had the wonderful opportunity of having the mayor of my school's area and one of the state elect senators from this area come in and to answer questions about everything from what actions should these elected officials do to minimize the school absentee issues that is being seen across the state. Everything from that to how do they get more street warning lights on Redwood Road in front of our school for student safety? And what the students hopefully build is that skill of communication. I will tell you that the students want to ask questions. Having them hear the answers from the elected officials themselves hopefully instills that kind of like that conduit, that knowledge that, oh, I really want to support something or I really oppose this. I can communicate with them. So maybe it can bridge that communication within the community, whether it be within their family, within their friends. And again, it ties back to civic ed, where we are all a part of the same laboratory of democracy here in Utah and throughout the United States. And it's just to help them build these connections and to see it doesn't matter how old you are. We are all a part and we are all impacted, but we also impact the system. I think that it's wonderful because I think that it provides an opportunity for the legislator to kind of remove themselves from the political thicket and get back into the laboratories of learning. Hopefully they make a more sound and informed decision about some of those things that are being discussed upon the Hill. I think that it's great too, because so often, unfortunately, there's rhetoric and claims and reasoning, but no evidence supported about really what's going on inside of classrooms. And this is a great way for those legislators to go like, okay, this is really what's going on, and hopefully build connections so that maybe they want to have further conversations. And I've been the annoying one, and I've had elected officials here almost every year that I've taught here, and they want to come back and they think that it's a wonderful opportunity. But I can tell you, there's no magic recipe. All I did was email. And so I think that some people go like, you must know someone. No, the Utah State Legislature has a great website where you can look up whoever the elected official of an area is by address. And I looked up and I sent emails that way. I sent it out to the lieutenant governor's office. I went to the Salt Lake County clerk and I went to the city office and just emailed. and everyone was amazing.
I love what you're saying about it's sort of being a two-way bridge, and I'm gonna pick up on that later. But I do want Ryan had some questions about sort of the challenges or the risks of this kind of work you're doing. I want to make sure we get to those.
I'm going to follow up though with a little bit of what you just said. Our most recent episode prior to this one, we kind of had that similar theme, which was like getting in touch with legislators is not nearly as intimidating as it seems. They're regular people. I think that goes the other way too. Like with what you're saying right there, William, when legislators come into our classrooms, they realize that teachers are people too. I think with some of the things that go on, we talk about legislators or teachers in abstractions, and when we're actually around each other, it humanizes every part of the interaction. We've only got a couple minutes left in the actual interview, but I think we're going to probably allocate some of our time to you for this response as well, because one of the things that I was thinking about, there's this concept that teachers should remain politically neutral. So we're not the hand of the government or either way. We're just trying to teach objective truths. But unfortunately, out of our control, sometimes our work become political and it's impossible to remain neutral. How do you balance the demands of like maybe some personal positions that you hold or personal views that you hold with the responsibilities as an educator? And for some more context, like as an English teacher, I wanted to model my English skills. So I would show students how to write a thesis statement, how to write an essay. Math teachers model their math skills all the time. So civic educators, I assume, need to model their skills as well. But that runs the risk of potentially conflicting with people. And this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, like maybe disagreeing better. But anyway, I'm going to let you take the runway now.
No, I think that's a very valid and a very widespread question, and even a point of anxiety for many. I think that there's kind of almost two questions in there about how do you do this professionally and how do you do this personally. Professionally, I'm going to tell you, be intentional. I am intentional with communicating to my students and my students' families that they're not going to know my opinion. My job is to educate, not persuade. And especially with history, there are so many different ripple effects that can occur from different events or items or people. And as long as they are open discussions, something that has not been like what is called a closed topic, as long as it is an open topic, then to analyze the different perspectives is something that I'm very intentional from the very get go.
I totally get what you're saying right there with like how you deliver that content to your students. But I guess part of my question would be like, let's say you wanted to write another op-ed, clearly established a position. And so even though you're not teaching that necessarily in class, like just the fact that you did it now establishes.
I think that's a phenomenal question. To give you an example that happens quite often, I love that question that you ask about how does a social studies teacher model what they're doing? I come back with that I voted sticker. And the kids will be like, of course, who did you vote for? And what a great opportunity is it for me to say, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but I'm not going to tell you. And the students will get almost frustrated, even angry, and be like, why? You can tell us who. And I go, my job is to not to persuade you one way or another. My job is to give you the information so that you can make a more informed decision. It's not my job to share opinions. It's to really look at the different parts of everything and let the students construct their own. Now, if I were to write another op-ed, or if I were to go to some sort of political event or activity, and if I were to see another student there, I'd say hello and just continue on my way. I know that there are certain things that I cannot do as a teacher. I can't say I'm speaking for my school or my school district. I don't wear my school t-shirt if I'm going to some sort of political event. I've made statements at the Utah State Legislature, but I had to specify that I'm speaking for myself and not for the school. And by doing that, it allows for me to still have that professional boundary that I will never bring any of my personal, whether it be political or religious or personal beliefs into the classroom, but it allows for me to still practice those rights and freedoms that are guaranteed to all. Being intentional that I'm not going to share my perspective with my students allows that if a student does read an op-ed or if I see them at something, they're not going to think that I'm pulling or promoting a one way or another.
What you're getting at there is the concept of like the skill matters more like than the specific content, right? We're teaching critical thinking and evaluation. And I think as much as the way I framed my question was almost geared at like, how do teachers protect themselves? But the other thing, the other side of that coin is like students hold positions and views. And if they have a teacher that's overly critical of a certain position or whatever, they may feel alienated on that end too. So I think with what you're saying, by not certainly explaining your position and recentering the conversation on whatever the topic is, that's putting the ball back in the hands of the students. All right, we are short on time. We're going to move into our reflections and insights. So, very grateful, William, for you joining us and sharing your thoughts, your passion, your ideas, and your practices with us. As we head to the end of the episode, though, Lauren and I would like to discuss some of our top takeaways and reflections. And Lauren, so what do you got? What are some of your takeaways?
I do want to underscore what William has modeled so beautifully is that when any teacher says, "This is what I think about this issue," in some ways that has kind of become the right way in the context of a classroom, right? The teacher thinks that, so it's the right, and kids will push back against that or they'll try and get there. And so that really centers the teacher, right? But when we stay out of that, what we're centering are the skills, are the content, are the formats we're using, whether it's a debate or whether it's a faux congressional hearing. And that I just think was just so brilliantly put by William. And it also reminds me, in my AP Lang class, I taught for many years the book Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which is a memoir about his time defending convicts on death row. Something that he said that's really a central theme of the book, and that's become kind of a central theme of my life, is he says, you can't understand anything at a distance. You have to get close. I think what William is modeling here is not only are legislators getting close to the classroom, are kids getting close to legislators, but we're also getting close to this process by which our entire society runs. So whether it's we the people or structured debates in class or whatever it is, this civics education idea is forcing kids to get close to the sort of mechanisms that run our society. And I think that is so, so powerful. And I think William's such a perfect example of how we can do that. What about you, Ryan? What's clanging around for you?
A lot. And I was able to get a lot out during the conversation with William because that was my thought process coming in here, is this idea that things that aren't innately political can become political. And so some issues might be like book banning or something like that, where it's like, I was teaching this book, I wasn't making a political statement, and now one party or the other wants to remove or add this book to the curriculum. And now whatever I do is either opposing a political viewpoint or perpetuating one. And I'm kind of stuck in the middle right here. But I think with what William mentioned and what you were just talking about, as long as the goal is around the big picture, which I think of like in other content areas, like the goal is to get the students to be doing more of the work than the teacher, right? So it's like if you walk into a math class and it's the teacher doing math on the board the entire period, we don't really know how much math the kids learned. We know that the teacher knows math. And that goes into what you were saying right there, Lauren, with that becomes the expectation. The teacher is the expert, the teacher knows things. So if a civics teacher is the one pontificating the entire time or establishing their position, well, they're the one that knows things. So what they say is right and what I think is wrong, or at least that's the perception that I have about it. But when the best practice is used, the students doing more of the work, and like you said, getting close to these structures and then wrestling with the concepts and the complications. But anyway, so that was my big takeaway, is the focus needs to be around like the skill development of the students. And then the vehicle is the civic structures that they're getting close to and that they're interacting with.
I love it. I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you so much to our guest and friend Williams for joining. And thank you for listening today. Please listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, Stitcher. As you know, we will be producing episodes every month. And a big shout out to our producer, Kayla Towner, who makes this all possible. So from my co-host, Ryan Rarick, and me, Lauren Merkley, thank you for listening.
Bye.